Hello, this is Stephen Burns once again. I'd like to share with you the navigational capabilities of Photoshop CS5. Currently, I have my navigational tools right here in the bottom of the tools bar, and I have two versions, one for the object and one for the camera itself. So I'm going to select the object, and then I would like to also show my 3D axis. And to see the 3D axis, keep in mind you have to have one of your 3D navigational icons selected here. So I'm going to go over to my view menu, show, and under show we're going to see 3D axis. I'm going to select it, and there it is. So if I take my rotational tool and move the object around, the 3D axis is going to move with it. Okay, it's just showing us how much we're moving and in the direction that we're moving into. Up and down, moving the mouse up and down, holding down our left click, we can rotate this around in any 3D directional view. Now I can also select the axis itself. So if I select this one, for instance, the axis that we're going to move in highlights in yellow, and then if I just click and move, you'll see a little red guide that's giving you the degrees of movement that you're making here. Okay, so we're moving around the z-axis. Let's go ahead and select the blue one, and you can actually squishing it. Now I just want to bring something to your attention. The rotational or the curved areas represents your rotational movement. Now you're going to see right over here some square boxes. Alright, just bring that to your attention. If you look at the green, we have a rotational, and once again you're going to see in the green the boxes. And if we move that around, we're basically squishing or stretching our object on the direction of that axis. So if we go to the blue and click and hold, we're moving it on the direction of the axis going vertically. Now I'm going to just go back to my object and spin it around. That's a real nice little handy visual feature. If we're in the rotation command and hold the Alt or Option key, we're going to get the roll command by default. There we are. And it's only going to rotate around the x-axis, or not the x but the z-axis. We're going in and out. It's rotating around the z-axis. Now let's take a look at our other navigational tools. We're going to click and hold, and we're going to see a variety of them. As you can see, it's designated by K as the shortcut to access all of your different tools. And as I push down K, you can see my mouse. If you look real closely, you can see the mouse in the middle changing different tools. You can also see right over here on the tools bar, I'm going to put it right next to the mouse so you can see them change together. Now keep in mind that if you go to your preferences, I'm going to Command or Control K, and we select under the General tab. Right here you have an option that says use Shift key for tool switch. Make sure you turn that off, and then that way you can just use your shortcut key itself instead of using the Shift command to access all of these other tools, because traditionally if you want to access the various tools with the same shortcut, you would hold down the Shift command. Okay, let's pull this out of the way just for a little bit. And we already played with the 3D and the object roll tool. Now we have the pan tool. The pan tool is moving it on the x-axis or the y-axis going up and down. So your x-axis is a direction left to right. The y-axis is moving up and down. And of course, we're going to go play around with the z-axis, moving things in and out on the z, which is our depth, or z depth, going in and out of our scene. Okay. And finally, we have our 3D object scale. Now we have scale manually here, right on their axis. Now before we played around with scaling the object by clicking the box here, and we can scale on that particular axis, but right here in the center we can click and drag to scale the object in all directions equally. It's constrained in all directions, and that's what this is here. We can constrain it in all directions, and we can resize our object. Now over to the right side, we're going to play around with the camera navigational tools. Now this is going to be a little bit different. I want you to notice something real quick. With the rotation tool, if I move to the right, the object moves to the right. If I move the mouse to the left, the object moves to the left. Now the camera is going to do the opposite because we're rotating the camera and not the object. The object is staying still, but the camera is moving. So if we move the camera, if I take my mouse and click and hold and move the mouse to the right, this moves in the opposite direction, which makes sense because the camera is actually moving around the object, which means the object would visually appear to move in an opposite direction. All right, so if I move the mouse upward, your object appears to rotate downward and vice versa. All right, let's go right over here to the roll tool, the same thing. If I pull my mouse to the left, the object moves in the opposite direction. So just keep those things in mind there. And we're going to play with the pan. I'm moving to the right, click and hold to the right, and again it moves in the opposite direction. And the same for up and down. If I move my mouse down, the object moves up. If I move the mouse up, the object will move down. And this is not the same thing as you guessed for the Z depth. Okay, I'm moving my mouse back to me, and it goes in the opposite direction and vice versa. And you can also move the mouse left to right, and it's going to move, left to right on the x-axis, but in opposite directions. Here's a nice little tool here, the 3D zoom tool, and that's basically your depth of field, not depth of field, but depth of your focal. I would say probably your lens in millimeters. So what I'm going to do is I have currently 67.17 in the focal length of the lens. And what if I want a 25 millimeter? And I'm going to select it. You can see the object move further away because we have a wider focal length. And if I take the camera itself and move it physically into the object, you're going to see the object distort just like a wide angle lens would. Okay, so now let's go ahead and select for the focal length 100 millimeter, and as you may guess, it's going to zoom in really close. And let's go back to our Z depth, the tool for moving on Z depth. We can move it in and out, and you can see that the object is not distorting because more of your telephocal lenses is going to compress the objects, keep more linear lines as opposed to giving you more circular lines here. Alright, so the shortcut for all of your camera tools is your N key. Now, as you can see, I'm using the N key as in Nancy to rotate through all of my tools. So I'm going to go to my rotation one, hold the Alt key. That will give me my roll tool. Okay, so now you have a little bit of an education on 3D navigation. And let's go on to the next step in terms of merging multiple 3D layers.